If nothing we've shown you yet has influenced you today, well, we have the panel upstairs on AI influencers next, so pop up there to check that out. But here on the main stage, I'd like to introduce our panel topic on autonomous agents. Are we building Skynet? Well, we'll find out. Either way, I'll be back. You come up and introduce the panelists.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Can you hear us okay? Awesome. So, as he said, the panel right now is on autonomous agents. I think we have a really kind of interesting and diverse kind of mix of panelists. So I'll get them all to introduce themselves. Yeah.
Hi everyone, SAMI, SHALABI, founder and CTO of Maven AGI, where we're building autonomous agents in the customer experience segment. We're about 14 months old, but we've had tremendous success right now. We're powering customer experience at folks like TripAdvisor, ClickUp, HubSpot, and we're kind of at a scale where we're doing over 1 million tickets a month. And as of background, Maven's my 4th company, and I was at Google for many years where I used to run all of product and engineering for Google News.
All right. It's a very cool venue here. Glad to be here. Hi everyone, I'm Alan. I'm Chief Product Officer at Nexa AI. So I lead all the product and operations at Nexa AI. So I did a little demo earlier, but just for quick reference, Nexa AI, we build on-device models and also inference solutions for AI agents. And our models, especially the Octopus series, has been ranking top, like 2nd place on Hugging Face, has been featured by Google I/O earlier this year. And we're working with some inbound collaborations from like AMD, Intel, HP to make on-device AI agents a reality.
Hey guys, I'm Andrew. I'm a partner at Gradient Ventures. We are Google's AI fund, or you could say an AI fund backed by Google, given we act pretty independently and invest in competitors to Google in AI. But prior to this, I was a startup founder and Teal Fellow. So excited to be here.
Awesome, thanks. And so I guess, we have someone from the investment side, someone who runs kind of, AI startup focused on the enterprise, but then also a founder with an AI startup focused on kind of building models and building tools for other startups to use. I guess before we kick off, what percentage of the crowd right now, what percentage of your founders, like just raise hands. And then the other guys, what do you do? You. Yep. Yeah.
I'm an engineer.
Okay, so do we have a lot of engineers and designers and so on here as well? Okay, awesome. Just to give us kind of a sense of what to focus on, because I think we can go in so many directions here. I think first question I have is, for like anyone, like a founder or someone at a startup who's looking at developing something in the agent space, what types of things do you think they should focus on to stand out? Because I guess, you were saying earlier you've seen a lot of startups, especially as a, working for the type of company you do. So I guess first, what should companies look at to stand out?
Yeah, I think I would concur with some of the other thoughts I heard earlier today. So, I think if you're doing something very broad and horizontal, it's hard to stand out. And so I think deeply understanding your customer and going deep makes a lot of sense. So I think a lot of the agent infrastructure today is pretty early and isn't super functional yet. And so startups can be successful by like going deeply understanding customer needs and building solutions that kind of solve problems in specific industries. Rather than going super broad, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And what's your...
Oh yeah, just to add on top of that, I think, what Andrew mentioned about understanding the customer problems is super important. And coming from the technical side, I think it's very important to understand the current limitations of AI agents and know when we can apply certain technical solutions to a certain problem, and to maximize the effect of the AI agents or large language models. And when needed, just do some technical breakthroughs. I think that will help you win a lot more problems to solve.
Just building on that, the thing I've learned, this is my 4th startup, you gotta start by solving a real problem that people care about. If you don't go there, it's very hard to create value. because you're a solution looking for a problem. And as you get deeper into the problem, you end up discovering a tremendous amount of nuance, because you're going to have to zig and zag and adapt and learn. But solving a real problem, and this is when we were kind of starting the problem of why did we end up doing customer experience, and in particular support. We dug pretty deeply into the problem statement. We talked with hundreds of companies, and we came back with a realization that there was this new constant that I didn't read. The average cost of a support ticket at a large enterprise is $40. That's a real problem to solve, because if you start to automate that, there's a tremendous amount of value creation. And this is why we ended up in this particular problem domain, because there is a real challenge there.
And in your experience, I guess, you mentioned that one of your customers is TripAdvisor. And I read somewhere that they're using Maven in 48 countries to kind of handle tens of thousands of tickets. I guess, one, what did you guys practically have to learn and adapt to in order to, one, land a customer like that, but then also have them using your solution at scale?
It was a journey, just to start off with. So when you kind of think about, so there's the practicalities of building stuff in this space. Everyone knows, there's a lot of engineers in the room, it's super easy to build a demo. Like super easy, you can go from zero to mind-bending, paradigm-shifting demo very, very quickly. Then when you start thinking about scale, how do you actually achieve scale? One of the first things we built when we were kind of building our solution is first we had an insight that it's not just about large language models, it's also solving a search problem, a personalized search problem, very similar to kind of our experiences building that at Google. But is that if you're trying to do things at scale, you need to have metrics that you can measure and adapt. So one of the first things we built, because it didn't exist, was an evaluation framework, like a robust evaluation framework that's very similar to the ones where we had human evaluators. I used to spend an obscene amount of money at Google doing human evals on AI algorithms, so we created an agentic version of that so that we can evaluate. When you have a metric, you can actually start to move it and start to test the limits on the technology that you're building, because there is a metric. So that was one of the first things we built, which allowed us to kind of get into a state where as you're building the solution, you're seeing results, you're moving the metric. The second piece of it is that we kind of discovered we were in the change management business. When you're building autonomous agents, the stuff is good, you get really good results, but you end up realizing that you're actually transforming how organizations operate. It's like, it's changing how work is done, and really understanding how these different departments need to embrace this. So in the case of support, I mean, people aren't dumb. When you see an autonomous agent that's suddenly answering, in our case, we're getting things to about 90% full automation, people realize what's going to happen, and then kind of getting into the business as well. What are the incentive structures? Is the way I'm going to get promoted about growing more teams? It's not really, so it starts to evolve, well, what is the future of the organization? Because you need to deal with the core human problem of like, what does this organization, how does it evolve? And as a result, it's actually led us to build a whole bunch of other pieces of tech, like how do you manage this stuff at scale? What's the equivalent of, like, we think of machine learning ops. There's agent ops now that have a whole series of things, because that's the new job that is emerging, and as a result, you kind of need to help just the change management pieces of it. And like as an anecdote, in the case of, I had to do a tech talk to explain AI 101 because they're just not AI natives. So there's a lot of education, a lot of change management, a lot of what I would describe free consulting that you need to do to help around this transformation, because in onset, people think it's Skynet. And it terrifies them, and then you kind of just have to dig and do a lot of education.
And Alan, kind of with you guys focused on building on-device agents, are you facing kind of, similar challenges and similar conversations with your target customers as to how you really think about and approach this?
Yeah, I can definitely echo what Sami has said. So a lot about this for AI agents, is about transforming how we human interact with computers in general. Like if we think about it, like people, like we as users or as people, as human, we're not trying to use computers we are using computers to get jobs done, to get some stuff done, to solve a problem. And a lot of times when we talk to customers, they have different requests. They are not sure, first not sure about the technical implementations. I think they are also not sure about how can we adapt this new kind of interface to solve an existing problem. How that change our human workflows and even technical workflows? So that's definitely a problem we're seeing as well. So yeah, so from our side, on the on-device side, so we're thinking maybe the future of AI agents is kind of more personal, and a lot of people kind of doesn't understand, has a vision about what AI agents could do for them, like in general, they can complete actions, but they don't understand, what are the limitations of these agents? How accurate are they? When do they need to, put specific guardrails around it to make sure the agents are doing the best jobs? And yeah, this is some trends we're seeing.
Okay, and then I think building on both of those, I think with you from the investor side, I'm guessing you see hundreds of companies, and I guess you guys have backed historically companies like Aura, like Writer, and so on. And now when you're looking at companies that focus on agents, are there specific things that you guys are looking at, or specific elements that are making you guys go, okay, these guys stand out versus all the other companies we're seeing?
Yeah, I think in 2022 we saw a bunch of really interesting infrastructure companies built on the back of LLMs, and I think there'll be a bunch of interesting companies built on the back of the agentic era. Obviously this week OpenAI's new O1 model is very agentic, and I think it's pretty interesting. I think this space is going to change rapidly in the next 12 months. The capabilities of these tools is going to change dramatically. One thing we've been looking at on the infrastructure side is the idea of if you end up having a bunch of agents operating for you as a company, websites are going to have to adapt with how they deal with agents. And so an example is if an agent wants to make a travel reservation or purchase a product online, a lot of the fraud systems and that how does an agent complete a payment and go through the checkout flow and not trip up a fraud system? And so I think there's actually some pretty interesting companies building in that space, building tools, and that's just one small piece. There's I think security and compliance built within that too. But if agents start to take on more human workflows, there's a lot of compliance and infrastructure that needs to be built to support your agentic coworkers that will exist in the future. And then I'm personally more interested in the application layer side, so I'm looking at companies building using agents to automate workflows. I have a healthcare background. I've met probably 50 companies building agents for prior auth and healthcare billing automation. So I think, I wish them all success. I think if you're building a company, I would find a specific vertical, deep customer need, kind of what we've been talking about, and try to maybe stay away from these ultra competitive markets where it feels like it's going to be hard to compete against many other companies. So I think if you can build a product that has depth and solves a deep problem for a very specific customer, I would start there rather than going super broad and trying to be something for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you touched upon, and Alan, you mentioned earlier, kind of around having to think about things like the guardrails and think about, okay, what fundamentally, I guess, human task is this agent replacing, and then how do you think about everything that goes alongside that? I think, with you guys at Nexa, how are you, I guess, solving that, and what proportion of the problems that you guys are solving are technical versus kind of everything else around security and ethics and everything like that?
I see. So currently, the trends we're working with customers, we're working on is, for example, there's a lot of trend on having AI agents, control the systems, like the actual devices, like AI PCs, AR glasses, or phones, and control the apps functionalities on the phones to help users save time when they are interacting with the consumer devices. So the main thing we're working on is, first of all, accuracy. Everybody cares about accuracy the most. And secondly, people want the sub-second experience. We found out people doesn't like to wait. Yep. They want AI agent to do things fast. and also do things correctly. So these are the main things we're working on. And also because we are on device, so we generally have the privacy settings correctly. So we have all the sensitive data that's more secure when you're interacting with AI agents. And also, I think in terms of other guardrails, I think people just mostly care about our partners they care about, they don't want agents to do things that's due to hallucinations where the users does not specifically want, and they want specific signals to see, okay, when are agents kind of diverging. So this is some challenge we're working on as well.
Okay, and then I think building on that again, one for you, Sami. I think if let's fast forward 12 months, you're working with a ton of customers. You have kind of multiple agents going out, kind of completing tasks. How do you think that far ahead to say, okay, are we still going to maintain that level of accuracy? And I guess what do you have to build around the technology in order to ensure that you maintain a lot of what your customers need in order to, for them to be successful?
So there's the realities of selling in enterprise. I mean, there's just some foundational compliance pieces that you need to pull together if you're ever going to be able to sell, things like data residency, referenceability, just where's the data, how do you unlearn, how do you delete data. So there's some basic things that anyone building SaaS or building software for enterprise needs to have a very good story. So for example, more on the technical side, tuning models is actually problematic because it's very hard to unlearn. So you can't really kind of use some of the state of the art to solve certain kinds of things. So that's kind of at the foundational layer. You need to be SOC 2, GDPR, every ISO, CCPA, every other. So there's real work that needs to be done, and none of that stuff comes out of the box. That's, I think, the first part. The second part is that there is tremendous amount of brand risk when you're kind of using autonomous agents in the wild. And having kind of a perspective and a technical approach that ensures that it's grounded in truth, it's not hallucinating, none of this stuff comes out of the box, and sometimes you end up having to think about a solution so that you can kind of contain these problems in ways that you can kind of protect around them. So that's kind of the second layer, is the way you architect. The third layer is we're seeing a whole new slew of attack vectors that I think the security community is evolving, and this is right now we're in a state of whack-a-mole, prompt injections, jailbreaking, hacks, getting into the instruction set, getting into the private data. How do you protect against that stuff? And this is just an area that's constantly moving, and we're in constant whack-a-mole, and we make it very clear to our customers, is we have the commercial grade stuff, but it takes energy to kind of do that. And then kind of the last piece is most people are kind of doing agentic frameworks that are answering questions that are personalized. Once you start to get into actions, we have to not only think about making sure these actions are protected, but also there's actually user experience implications. I'll give you an example. So in our case, we're working with a very large bank, and one of the things that you could potentially do is transfer $10,000 from my account to another account. Yes, we can call the API, but guess what? That one is not a passive action where it's just what is my balance, and you're able to respond. You actually need to introduce user experience to create a little bit of friction, because some of these things are more sensitive than others. So there's a lot of guardrails that are just out of compliance, et cetera, but as you kind of dig into the problem deeper, there's a lot of nuance, and there's a lot of user experience implications, and there's a lot of details that need to be entangled, which was why when you go deep in a problem, oh my God, there's just a lot of minefields.
Okay, and we've mentioned compliance, GDPR, guardrails. I guess kind of, Andrew, from your perspective as an investor, what type of skill sets are you kind of, I guess, advising startup founders to start to think about and focus on beyond the pure technical in order to succeed in this space?
Yeah, I just want to build on the point you were making about reputation. I'm a former founder, and so I get that when you're building a company early on, you're often kind of a little bit over-promising, under-delivering, because you need to sell deals to go raise money. But it's been interesting for me. I think that I've seen a trend of companies that have made a lot of promises about what they're able to do, and then when you talk to the end user, unfortunately, sometimes the end user maybe feels otherwise. And so I think that's a big challenge right now, given some of this technology is very new and we don't quite know how to utilize it yet, and it's improving rapidly. So I think founders, if I was a founder today, I would definitely be cognizant of that and probably again focus on a smaller number of users and really solving maybe one problem properly first, rather than trying to be everything to everyone. Going back to your question, I think at Gradient we care a lot about go-to-market. We want to back real businesses, not technical demos and projects. We want to build in. We think we've been investing in AI since I can't take credit for this. I joined this year, so I'm jumping on the bandwagon. But Gradient's been investing since 2017 into AI companies. I think Google had an early foresight that this was going to be a massive, massive market and opportunity. And I think we want to back real businesses, and so that means teams that have deep insights in a market, have spoken to a lot of customers, maybe experience in that market, and move quickly, go-to-market driven, very sales driven. So ideally, technical founders that can sell, or very strong technical leader and sales leader. But the teams I love backing deeply understand their customer and are just grinding on selling. They're not searching for a problem for their solution. They deeply understand their customer. I have a company that sells to local law enforcement and emergency services, and it's pretty interesting because the CEO there just deeply understands the needs of his customer and the challenges in that industry. So I think those are the fun companies where they deeply understand what they're building, and they're just stepping on the gas on sales, which it sounds like is what you've been doing. So.
And no, I think that's brilliant answer. And from your perspective, Alan, when you're kind of building a platform which can be the foundation for a lot of other kind of companies, startups to build things, what kinds of innovation are you seeing in the space? What kinds of things have you personally seen where you've gone, wow, I didn't even know that that was a problem that needed to be solved, but we have a platform or solution that can help.
I think definitely first of all, on device, it's something. Actually, this idea comes from when we participated in the CES event at the earlier of this year. We saw a lot of companies trying to integrate AI solutions to their large language models capabilities to their solutions, but they also have those latency requirements and also privacy requirements, and also they're worrying about how much inference cost I'm going to spend on that particular solution. And because of this, I think on-device recently is growing a lot. There's previously another panel about small language models and on-device. So it's definitely growing, and also Apple Intelligence also teaching the community about on-device AI agents. And besides that, I think recently the most innovative solution I'm seeing is from OpenAI, the O1 model. I think previously one of the challenges of AI agents is accuracy. I think definitely that's everybody's priority, and it's specifically from a technical standpoint, breaking down the tasks of a user request is kind of the first step. If you failed to break down the task successfully, basically every steps after that will be a failure case. So, but with the O1 model recently, even though that's a closed source model, we definitely see a great opportunity in making AI agents more autonomous, making it more accurate, and can't wait to see more kind of open source solutions to see how can we build open source kind of O1 models or better planning or reasoning for AI agents in the future.
I'm actually going to answer this in a completely from a different perspective, not on the technology. I think there's the technology is I haven't had this much fun in tech in years, and this stuff is really cool. The thing that's actually really disrupted right now is actually software economics. First, when we built software prior, nobody thinks about the cost of a database call. Now you have this thing that's crazy expensive to actually call. So that's one fundamental change in the economics of it. It will get cheaper and cheaper every 6 months. We're seeing it drop to about 20% of that, but we're still, there's not enough zeros yet for that to be, it's free. The second part is, historically, anything that's selling to enterprise has been seat-based sales. That business model is there are no seats. So now we've been talking for years and years about value-based sales and how you price things, and as a result, we actually need to not just think about the innovation in the software, but in the way you price it and the way we're selling it. And we're doing consumption-based, but we're still thinking, but that doesn't always work because it misaligns incentives. So there's, I think we're still kind of in the early innings of thinking about how to innovate on the business model such that it actually makes sense for folks. Because right now, the current state of it, you can only go after very high value use cases. Like consumer use cases, unless you have a boatload of money to burn, it's just way too expensive.
And I mean, it's a fantastic point. And I guess from a founder perspective, how early should they be thinking about that versus building something that solves a good problem?
I mean, this is, it's actually related to how much money you raise. I mean, given how expensive this stuff is, the margin for error is like, I mean, our current LLM bills are, like, I never thought a company our age is paying this level of compute cost, compute.
And I imagine if you're hiring researchers or ML engineers, they're also
everything
expensive.
is very, very expensive.
That part is only going to increase in
You know,
cost.
the olden days of I'll raise $1 million and start a company. In this world, you need way more money to actually kind of to explore these ideas, and as a result, you need to be very aware of it. I mean, for example, in terms of we're historically, we kind of like, you run with a lot of extra capacity. Now you run pretty hot because the bills are ginormous.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys recently raised 8 million or so?
I think more than 10 million.
Was that enough based on everything?
Oh no,
You raised 20 million.
28.
Yeah. Okay. Was that enough? I'm based on everything you're saying, like, yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of it left, so, and the space, but the capital intensity here is a little larger than your typical software company at our stage.
Yeah, and for AI talents in general, it just can be very costly. And I think also another trend when we are interacting with traditional hardware like companies is like they're also lacking the people to utilize our models and inference solutions. And sometimes we need a lot of engineers just to build a proof of concept for them. And just basically for AI talents is both lacking in terms of like the researcher side on the model, fine tuning, pre-training. Is also on how to use this model to orchestrate them on both sides. So is it enough? We'll see.
And how worried are you about things going wrong? I mean, you talked earlier about agents becoming more autonomous, about O1 and kind of some of these new models. I guess with more autonomy comes more risk of something out of the control of the operator of the human going wrong. And so, yeah, how much sleep do you lose at night, if any, over things going wrong, over the associated risks with more autonomy?
That's a great question. So definitely, like for AI agent, its special capability is to not just like returning a chat to you, it's actually getting stuff done for you. And so the consequences of doing the stuff wrong is going to be much more high compared to the traditional giving out a chat. So that's definitely something where kind of number one priority is kind of related to accuracy. And besides that, I think to introduce guardrails around this kind of risks, I think Sami mentioned it earlier before, like we need to introduce more user experience related guardrails around it. Maybe put human in the loop and getting human feedback and all those kind of stuff.
Okay. And do you see kind of either a short-term or medium-term world where agents are handling either kind of, I guess, life-sensitive kind of tasks around, healthcare, emergency services, and so on, Or do you feel that's an area that, you know, we're not going to be venturing into just yet unless we kind of, you know, have a lot more of that control, so to speak? And
So I'll talk about it not in the healthcare context. One of the things when we were starting out was, so we're kind of doing the support stuff, and what we did was we used to do these back tests where we we'll ingest like your last month's worth of support stuff and then do a side-by-side. And then we would grade what the agent produced versus what the humans were doing. And I mean, it's not a surprise now, but we were quite surprised, and our customers were surprised, that the level of inconsistency and that actually people, like the results that they were getting, the humans weren't doing a really good job. And every time we found differences, it was actually the bot was right and the humans were wrong. So in any, like to take that to the next, in any field, there is human error. Yeah. The thing that's actually been very clear is that people's expectations of autonomous agents is actually higher than our expectations of what people can do. So this is actually one of the things is it feels the bar is much, much higher. And therefore, yes, it's worrisome, but the bar is much, much higher than just a human doing the same task because the error rates are actually quite high, but people don't feel they are. So part of it's a human problem, part of it's a cultural problem, and there's probably also like, there's a legal aspect of it. Is when it messes up, who pays?
yeah, I guess, did you want to build? Yeah.
Yeah, so building on top of that, I think for agents, I think in the future, it's definitely value-driven, which means that we're still, will be applying agents to where it can solve the biggest pain points, biggest problems. And however, I see like maybe we can gradually go to a full autonomous agent space. For example, maybe at right now, the AI agents would just be augmenting the workers' capabilities to do certain, maybe even very life-related jobs like healthcare, to mainly just use AI agents as a way to speed up workers' efficiencies. So in terms of how to evolve AI agents, I really like to compare it to like full self-driving or autonomous driving, right? Having the car drive for you is kind of related to your life's risk, which safety, but you have to supervise it first, and gradually it goes unsupervised.
Yeah, I think there's actually a lot of clearly there's a lot of noise in AI, and enterprises are coming to grips with, which tools should they adopt. I think from what I've heard, especially in healthcare, as one example, there actually have been kind of AI pauses where health systems have decided, hey, all the way down to the doctor level, please stop using AI tools for now. We're doing an audit of all of the options we have, and we're going to start making decisions. We're going to be reviewing the quality of the output of these models and tools, and I think we'll probably continue to see that. To be honest, that probably positions well for the incumbents. So I think that probably allows OpenAI to go after a lot of the big enterprise use cases that they choose to go after, given they have brand recognition, what have you. But I think there is definitely fear within, I think if you look at UiPath's last earnings call, they talked about the fact that, RPA has been hit mostly because these big enterprises are just kind of like confused. Like, we don't know which tools we should be using. We don't know which are quality and which aren't. And so for now, we're just going to take a moment, evaluate everything, and come back. I also heard of a lot of some of the top US law firms did a review of all of the different application layer software tools out there in legal. So I think we'll probably see more of that. Folks kind of comparing the quality of all of the options in front of them, and we'll probably see, there's a lot of noise today, and I think companies are kind of getting to grips with, which companies should they be evaluating, which maybe are all talk.
Okay, yeah. No, it's a great point. And I guess, one thing one fear you constantly hear is, about agents going rogue and so on. And I guess you both touched upon it earlier, but I mean, if you have a hypothetical situation where an agent makes a decision that is unethical or that leads to a loss of life, for example, who should be accountable? Is it Nexa? Is it the company who was operating the agent? Is it the agent itself? I guess, where do you see that going?
So this question,
I know where I'd like it to go.
Exactly.
But there's the reality. Policymakers. I mean, this is where
Yeah.
policy needs to play a big role and put. I mean, the larger you are, the more you need to kind of invest in systems that introduce guardrails. The smaller you are, there needs to be room for innovation. This is an area where I think it's like if you put too much regulation, no one's going to innovate. If you put too little, it's going to be a mess. And I think it's probably a function of the size of the organization and the size of the revenue, and it's to kind of drive how much guardrails. And there's clearly a bunch of use cases where there needs to be a lot of rules. And so if you're doing stuff in healthcare, healthcare needs to have a lot of checks and balances in terms of how it's built, how it was tested, maybe even nutrition labels, like very rigorous, I mean, FDA style stuff if it's in that world. But this is kind of an area that's going to probably, we're going to get, like as technologists, we're going to get ahead, and then policy is going to slowly catch up.
Yeah, I think FDA actually have been trickling in with new guidance around clinical decision making and how how you're using AI in the practice of medicine. And I think previously it was very much like, it's fine if it's advisory, it's no big deal. I think now increasingly it's maybe shifting toward, well, this is now a device, like this should be reviewed by FDA. And so it will be interesting to see, where that trend goes in many industries.
Yeah, and just from the the model providers infrastructure perspective, definitely this is not up to us. There's definitely going to be a lot of discussions going forward about the responsibility side. So we definitely see it as a mutual responsibility. Like from the model provider side, we definitely want to provide some guardrails around ethics, safety, etc. And also from the human perspective, definitely how you use the model really depends on the human. So I think right now, kind of like a bold assumption is like, I kind of think of these new models, new agents, kind of like a new type of interface, like referring to earlier. It's a new desktop or iPhone. Like if you use your iPhone to do something bad, whose accountability is that?
Great point. I'm actually less concerned about agents going off the rails and doing something unethical. I'm more concerned about people designing agents to do unethical tasks. And, I think the challenge of spam and fraud on the internet with AI now is just like kind of unbelievable how hard it is to stop and how complex these agents and LLM-based kind of fraud systems are getting. So I think it's a huge challenge for the industry. Probably a really good opportunity for a founder out there
Yeah.
if you're thinking about that space.
But going back to where do we draw the lines? I mean, this is a pretty typical pattern you see with regulated industries. They tend to buy risky things because you can kind of, I mean, when you're small and you're trying to do a big deal with a big company, they pretty much put all the indemnification on you, which ultimately contains the problem. This is why in many regulated, they tend to work, which is why there's opportunity for startups to kind of do some innovation, because you can come in and it changes the risk profile so larger organizations can de-risk it by just containing it in whoever they're working. This is why you see people doing spin-outs, et cetera, and building those relationships. So there's all sorts of, like, it has its problems, but it also creates opportunities for new folks to kind of do highly disruptive things.
Awesome. And I guess kind of on that note, last question, I know we have 2 minutes left, but for each of you, what's your kind of vision for the future of AI agents? Anyone can go first.
So at least the way I think about it is that we're going to get AI agents that are actually going to be delivering on outcomes as opposed to tasks. Today, we think of AI agents as like, do this, do that, do this other thing. But you can kind of imagine a world where when you have all these agents and like a robust orchestration layer, you can start saying to AI agents, I just want 100 leads to my, I want 3 design partners for my new features, and all these agents start doing stuff, and it starts to fundamentally change how we operate, and therefore, like, strategic talent in organizations is going to become much more important, and it's probably a skill that all of us are going to get. But I think that's outcomes-based agents is probably where I see the world headed, and we're excited to kind of get there.
So from my side, I definitely see AI agents in the future to be much more customizable and kind of serve as a personal secretary. where not only it can individually complete some task for you, but it can also, you know, when it did something wrong, you can teach it to do it right. It can improve by itself. And definitely, we'd love for it to be on device because you're saving a lot of inference cost and protecting privacy and having great latency.
I think one thing I think about is I'm interested in what the end state looks like because right now we're replicating human tasks with agents. So eventually we kind of get to a confusing world where an agent is completing all these steps and submitting it to another agent, which on the other side is then going and reviewing the document and downloading it and completing tasks, right? Like, I think about that in healthcare. A lot of the companies are automating all these tasks that are completed by humans today, and it's like, what does the end state look like? Is the end state really agents acting like humans on both sides, or is there some kind of eventual... I mean, I don't really have the answer, but I'm kind of interested in where we end up.
Yeah, I agree, and I guess you know that end state also means what is the broader societal implications on jobs and everything. I know we're out of time, but thank you all for listening. I hope you found that insightful, and thank you all the panelists as well. Yes.